The video was only 40 seconds long, but it was enough to end a marriage. Doyun Beck watched it 11 times before he believed his own eyes. 3 days later, that same 40-second clip would be the only thing standing between his wife and a bullet. If this story pulls at you the way it pulled at me while writing it, please subscribe and drop a comment telling me what you think really happened in that video. Hit like before you keep reading. It helps more stories like this reach you. Don't let go. The voice on the screen was a man's voice, low and urgent. The camera angle was bad, shot from across the water, grainy and shaking in the wind. But the hand in the frame was unmistakable. Dark brown fingers wrapped around a man's wrist. Her wedding ring caught the light for 1 second before the video cut to black. Doyun set the tablet down on his desk like it had burned him. The room behind him was quiet except for the rain outside the window of his house in Iseal Bay, a small harbor town 2 hours from anywhere that mattered, which was exactly why he had built his life there. Quiet streets. No one watching. Or so he had believed until an hour ago, when his head of security walked in holding a tablet and a face that already knew it was about to break something. "Where did you get this?" Doyun said. His voice did not rise. It never did. That was what made the men under him afraid of him. Not the shouting, but the stillness right before something terrible happened. "It came in tonight," said Hae Won-young, the bodyguard who had stood beside Doyun since they were both 19 years old and angrier at the world than they had any right to be. "Same hour the warehouse on the South Pier got hit. 6 of our men are in the hospital, sir. Someone gave Kwon Tae-sang our schedule. Someone who knew exactly when that shipment would be unguarded." Doyun did not answer right away. His eyes were still on the frozen image on the screen, his wife's hand, Kwon Tae-sang's wrist, the dock at night. The words "don't let go" hanging in the air between them like something he was never supposed to hear. "Adaeze doesn't know anything about the shipments," Doyun said. It came out quieter than he meant it to. "Then why was she standing on Kwon's private dock at 11 at night, sir? 2 hours before his men hit us." Doyun didn't have an answer. That was the problem. 6 months ago, he would have laughed at anyone who suggested his wife could betray him. 6 months ago, he had still believed there was nothing in this world strong enough to make her lie to him. But the video didn't lie, did it? 2 floors above him, in a room with warm yellow light and a window that looked out over the harbor, Adaeze Bankhole sat on the edge of the bed with her phone pressed to her ear, her whole body curled forward like she was trying to make herself smaller. On the other end of the line, a voice she did not recognize was speaking slowly, the way people speak when they want every word to land like a stone. "Your sister is still breathing," the voice said. "For now, you remember the terms. You tell no one. Not your husband. Not his men. Not the police. If one more person finds out what you're doing, we send you a different kind of proof that we have her." "Please," Adaeze said, and her voice cracked in a way she hated. "I did what you asked. I went to the dock. I gave him what you wanted me to give him." "Did you?" the voice said, almost amused. "We'll see." The line went dead. Adaeze lowered the phone slowly, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. 3 days. It had been 3 days since the call first came, 3 days since a photo of her younger sister Chidinma, tied to a chair in a room she didn't recognize, eyes red from crying, had appeared on her phone with no name attached, just a string of numbers and one sentence. "Do exactly what we say or she dies." She had not told Doyun. She could not tell Doyun. The voice had been clear about that from the very first call. If his organization got involved, if even one of his men so much as looked in the wrong direction, Chidinma would disappear for good. So Adaeze had done the only thing she could think of. She had gone, alone, to the one man in this country who might be able to help her without asking Doyun for permission first. Kwon Tae-sang. She had never planned to meet him. She had certainly never planned to be standing on his dock with her hand wrapped around his wrist, because her knees had given out beneath her the moment he told her, calmly, like a man delivering test results, that he knew exactly who was holding her sister and why. "Don't let go," he had said, not because he was pulling her toward him, because she was the one who had grabbed onto him, dizzy and breaking apart, and he had been the only solid thing nearby to keep her from going into the water. She had no idea that across the bay, a camera with a long lens had caught all of it from the worst possible angle. She had no idea that somewhere in her own home, that footage was already being watched by the one person she had been trying so hard to protect. A knock came at the door. Sharp. Final. "Adaeze." Doyun's voice. flat in a way she had never heard from him in 4 years of marriage. Come downstairs. She wiped her face quickly and stood. Doyun, what's wrong? Did something happen at the warehouse? Hae-won said there was. Downstairs, he said again, and walked away before she could finish her sentence. She followed him down the long staircase of the house they had built together, past photographs of their wedding day in Lagos, past the small painting her late father had given them as a gift before he passed, a hand-painted image of a harbor at sunrise, the only piece of her family she had brought with her when she moved to this country. Doyun was waiting in his study, tablet in hand, and beside him stood an old man with silver hair and a face carved from disappointment. Elder Hyun-soo Baek, Doyun's great-uncle, the head of the family long before Doyun was old enough to understand what that meant. There she is, Hyun-soo said, his eyes sweeping over Adaeze the way they always had, like she was a stain on something that used to be clean. Right on time. What is going on? Adaeze asked, looking from the old man to her husband. Doyun, talk to me. Doyun turned the tablet around and pressed play. She watched her own hand close around Kwon Tae-sang's wrist. She watched the dock, the dark water, the words she remembered hearing. Don't let go. Now playing back to her like a confession she never made. The video ended exactly where it had to, exactly where it would do the most damage, cutting away before Kwon ever said another word, before the conversation about her sister, before any context at all. That is not what it looks like, Adaeze said, and even as the words left her mouth she understood how useless they sounded. Then tell me what it looks like, Doyun said. His voice had gone somewhere cold and far away, a place she had never been allowed to see before. Because to me, it looks like my wife meeting privately with the one man in this country who wants my organization destroyed. 6 hours before his people hit my warehouse and put 6 of my men in a hospital. 6 hours, Adaeze. I didn't tell him anything about your business. I swear to you, I would never. Then why were you there? She opened her mouth. The voice on the phone echoed in her head. You tell no one. And the photo of Chidinma's face, terrified, tied to a chair, rose up behind her eyes so clearly she nearly lost her footing. I can't tell you, she said, and her voice broke on every word. Not yet. Please, Doyun, just trust me. Please. Trust you. Hyun-soo repeated, almost laughing. This is what 4 years of trust looks like. A foreign woman standing on a rival's dock at midnight, holding his hand, and asking my nephew for more trust. This isn't your conversation, Elder, Adaeze said, finding a thread of her own voice again. This is between my husband and me. It became my conversation the moment your husband's enemy nearly burned down a building my family owns, Hyun-soo said. I told Doyun years ago that a marriage like this would end in shame. I did not expect to be proven right quite this fast. Enough, Doyun said, but he did not say it to defend her. He said it because the room was spinning out of his control and he needed it to stop. Adaeze looked at him, really looked at him, and for 1 second she thought she saw something behind his eyes that wasn't anger at all. It was something closer to grief, like a man watching something he loved fall out of a window and knowing he was too far away to catch it. Doyun, she said, softer now. Look at me. You know me. For years. You know I would never put you or your men in danger. There is something happening that I cannot explain to you right now, but I promise you, on my father's life, I have done nothing to betray you. For one long moment, he said nothing. The rain kept falling outside. Hyun-soo watched them both like a man watching a card game he had already decided the outcome of. Hae-won, Doyun said finally, without turning around. Take her to the guest house by the harbor. 2 men outside the door. No phone calls in or out until I decide what happens next. Doyun, go, he said. He still hadn't looked at her. Hae-won stepped forward, his face apologetic in a way his hands could not afford to be as he reached for her arm. Adaeze pulled back once, not from him, but from the moment itself, like her body refused to believe this was actually happening. You don't understand what you're doing, she said, and her voice had stopped shaking now, had turned into something harder. There are things at stake here that have nothing to do with you or your business. If you push me out of this house tonight, you have no idea what you're putting in danger. Then tell me, Doyun said, finally turning to face her, and for the first time his voice cracked, just slightly, right down the middle. Tell me what it is. Give me one true thing, Adaeze, and I will stop this right now. She looked at him. She looked at Hyunsu standing there with quiet satisfaction folded into the lines of his face. She thought of her sister's eyes in that photograph, of the voice on the phone promising a different kind of proof if she said one more word to the wrong person. "I can't," she whispered. Something in Doyun's face closed like a door. Then there's nothing left to say. The guest house by the harbor was small, white, and far too quiet. Adaeze stood at its single window for a long time after Haewon left. Two men posted outside the door, watching the black water of the bay shift under a sky with no stars in it. She had given up everything to come to this country. Her career, her home, the easy comfort of being surrounded by people who looked like her and sounded like her, because she believed Doyun Baek was worth it. Because for 4 years, he had made her believe she had found somewhere she finally belonged. Now she stood in a house with guards outside her door, cut off from the one person she had trusted most, carrying a secret that could cost her sister's life if she spoke it and her marriage if she didn't. Her phone buzzed once on the small table beside the bed. A new message. No name attached. Just a single photograph. Her sister, in the same chair, the same room. But this time there was a second person in the frame, standing just behind Chidinma's shoulder, their face turned slightly toward the camera like they wanted to be seen. Adaeze's stomach dropped straight through the floor. She knew that face. She had seen it in her own house, more than once, carrying tea trays and folders into Doyun's study, smiling politely every time Adaeze passed her in the hallway. It was Yunbai Cho, Doyun's personal assistant. The message beneath the photo was short. "We are closer than you think. Stop trying to find help. Next time, we won't ask nicely." Outside the window, far across the bay, a single light blinked on in a house that belonged to a man named Kwon Tae-sang, and Adaeze realized, with a cold and sudden certainty, that the only person who might actually believe her was the one man her husband now believed was his enemy. Adaeze did not sleep that night. She sat on the floor of the guest house with her back against the cold wall, staring at the photo of her sister and Yunbai Cho until the sky outside turned from black to gray. By the time the sun came up, she had made a decision that frightened her more than the men standing outside her door. She was going to find a way out, and she was going to do it alone. Across the bay, in the kitchen of his own house, Doyun Baek had not slept either. He sat at the table with the tablet in front of him. The video paused on the same frame, her hand on Kwon's wrist, playing on a loop in his mind even when the screen went dark. Haewon stood near the doorway, arms crossed, watching his boss the way a man watches a fire he isn't sure has gone out yet or is only resting. "You should eat something, sir," Haewon said. "Pull every camera we have near the South Pier," Doyun said instead, not looking up. "Every angle. I want to see this footage from a different position before I believe it's the whole story." Haewon hesitated. "Elder Hyunsu already gave the order to lock the case as settled, sir. He said there's no need to chase shadows when the proof is already sitting in our hands." "I don't care what Hyunsu ordered," Doyun said. And for the first time since the video arrived, something close to fire came back into his voice. "I want every camera within half a mile of that dock. Tonight." Haewon nodded slowly. "There's something else, sir. One of the warehouse guards who survived the attack says he heard the men talking before they ran. They mentioned a name. Tae-sang's second-in-command, a woman named Soo Min-ha. The guard says she gave the order to torch the building, not Kwon himself." Doyun's eyes lifted. "Kwon didn't give the order? That's what the guard says. He could be wrong. Or lying." Doyun sat back in his chair, his mind turning the new information over like a coin he didn't trust the weight of. If Kwon hadn't ordered the attack, then the timing of Adaeze's meeting with him made even less sense as a betrayal. Unless it made a different kind of sense entirely. Unless his wife hadn't been planning anything against him at all. "Bring the guard here," Doyun said. "I want to hear it from him myself." By mid-morning, Adaeze had found her chance. The two men outside her door had grown careless with boredom, leaving a gap of almost 10 minutes between their rounds along the harbor path. She slipped out through the small back window of the guest house, her bare feet silent against the wood, and made her way down to the water's edge where a narrow path curved around the bay toward the only person who might listen to her without judging her first. She did not call ahead. She did not have a working phone she trusted anymore. She simply walked, her heart in her throat, until she reached the iron gate outside Kwon Tae-sang's home and told the guard there exactly who she was. Kwon received her in a quiet sitting room with tall windows that looked out over the same water She had crossed the bay to see from the other side. He did not look surprised to find her standing in his doorway. He looked like a man who had been expecting this conversation since the night they first met on his dock. "You shouldn't have come here," he said. "If your husband's men find out you walked into my house, it will only make things worse." "They already think the worst," Adaeze said. "I don't have anything left to lose by making it official." Kwon studied her for a long moment, the way a man studies a puzzle he's already solved but hasn't decided whether to explain. "Sit down," he said finally. "I think it's time I told you something I should have told you the first night you came to me." Adaeze sat, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "Tell me what you know about my sister." "I know who's holding her," Kwon said. "And I know it isn't who you think." Her stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "The voice on your phone calls, the one giving you instructions, threatening your sister's life. It isn't a stranger working for some outside enemy. It's someone close to your husband's family. Someone who has spent years waiting for the right moment to take everything Doyun built out from under him." "Yunbai Cho," Adaeze said quietly. "His assistant. I saw her in the photo with my sister." Kwon's eyebrows lifted slightly. "You're faster than I expected." "Yes, Yunbai Cho. But she's not the one giving the orders, Adaeze. She's only a piece on the board, same as you and your sister are pieces. The person actually controlling this, the person who arranged for your sister to be taken in the first place, is someone who has been sitting in Doyun's house, eating at his table, for longer than you've been married to him." Adaeze felt the air leave her lungs. "Who?" Before Kwon could answer, the door to the sitting room opened, and a woman stepped inside without waiting to be invited. Tall, sharp-eyed, dressed in black, with a calm that did not match the urgency of her steps. "Taesang," the woman said, "we have a problem. Doyun Baek's men are searching every camera near the pier. If they find the second feed, the one that shows what really happened that night, this whole plan falls apart in a single afternoon." Adaeze stood. "Who is this?" "This is Soo-min Ha," Kwon said. "My second in command. And the only reason I knew about your sister at all." He turned to Soo-min, his voice low. "How much time do we have?" "Not much," Soo-min said. "Doyun pulled a guard in for questioning an hour ago. If that guard talks about what he actually saw the night of the warehouse fire, Doyun is going to start asking why my name came up instead of yours." "Wait," Adaeze said, stepping between them. "What does the warehouse fire have to do with my sister?" Kwon turned to her, and for the first time since she'd met him, something like guilt crossed his face. "Because the same person who took your sister is the same person who set fire to that warehouse and made it look like my organization did it. They needed Doyun and me at each other's throats. A war between us was always part of the plan. It keeps everyone too distracted to notice what's really happening underneath." "And what is really happening underneath?" Adaeze asked, her voice shaking now, not from fear, but from something closer to fury. Kwon hesitated, glancing once at Soo-min before he answered. "Someone wants Doyun's entire organization to collapse from the inside. Not through a war with me. Through you. Through the story everyone will believe once they see that footage of us, that his black wife betrayed him to his enemy. It was never about money or power, Adaeze. It was about making sure Doyun never trusted you again. Because as long as he trusts you, you're the one person close enough to see what's really happening before it's too late. If this story is pulling you in the way it's pulling at me, take a second to subscribe and drop a comment with who you think is really behind all of this. I promise the next part is going to surprise you." Back at the house, the guard sat across from Doyun in a small room near the back of the property, his hands shaking slightly as he answered every question put in front of him. "I'm telling you the truth, sir," the guard said. "I heard Soo-min Ha give the order myself." She said. He paused, choosing his words carefully. "She said it needed to look like Kwon's men did it. Not that it actually was Kwon's order." Doyun leaned forward. "Why would Soo-min lie to her own boss about who gave the order to attack my warehouse?" "I don't know, sir. But there's something else." The guard's eyes flicked toward the door, then back. "Before the fire started, I saw a car near the south gate. It wasn't one of Kwon's vehicles. It had your family's mark on the plate." The room went very still. "My family's mark," Doyun repeated slowly. "Yes, sir. I only saw it for a second before everything happened so fast, but I'm sure of what I saw." Doyun sat back, his mind racing through every member of his household who might have had access to a vehicle bearing the Baek family seal. There were not many. His great-uncle Hyun-soo, a handful of senior drivers, and Yunbai Cho, who managed the family's private fleet of cars as part of her duties as his assistant. Hae-won, Doyun said. Where is Yunbai right now? Hae-won, standing near the door, frowned. She told me this morning she was taking the day to visit her mother in the next town over. Said she'd be back by evening. Has anyone confirmed that? Hae-won's frown deepened. No, sir. Find her, Doyun said. Now. Meanwhile, Adaeze sat frozen in Kwan's sitting room, the weight of what she'd just heard pressing down on her like something physical. If this isn't about money or power, she said slowly, then what does this person actually want? What is the end of this plan? Kwan and Soo-min exchanged a look that told Adaeze the answer was worse than anything she'd already imagined. There is a piece of land, Kwan said finally, north of the city, that has belonged to the Beck family for 3 generations. It sits on top of something far more valuable than anyone outside the family has ever known. A mineral deposit large enough to fund an organization twice the size of Doyun's for the next 20 years. The land was supposed to pass to Doyun the day he turned 30. But there's a clause in the family will, one almost no one remembers, that says if Doyun's marriage ends in scandal or disgrace before that birthday, the land passes instead to the next eldest member of the family bloodline. Adaeze felt the room tilt slightly. Hyun-soo, Kwan confirmed. Your husband's great-uncle. The man who has hated you since the day Doyun brought you into that family. He doesn't need a war with me to take what he wants, Adaeze. He only needs you gone, and your marriage destroyed beyond repair, before Doyun's 30th birthday. When is his birthday? Kwan's expression did not soften. 4 days from now. Adaeze's hands curled into fists in her lap. And my sister? Leverage, Soo-min said quietly. To make sure you cooperated long enough for the video to do its damage, and long enough for you to disappear quietly once the marriage was already finished. Hyun-soo never intended to actually hurt your sister. He only needed you afraid enough to do exactly what you were told. Then where is she now? Is she safe? Kwan and Soo-min exchanged another look, and this time it was Soo-min who answered, her voice gentler than before. We don't know exactly where Chidinma is being held. Yunbai Cho has been managing communication with you directly on Hyun-soo's behalf, but she moves locations every day to avoid being traced. We've been trying to find the location for almost a week. Adaeze stood so fast the chair behind her nearly tipped over. Then we need to move faster than that. My sister has 4 days left before this man's plan finishes itself, and so do I. There is one more thing, Kwan said, standing as well. Something that might be the only real advantage we have. What? The second camera, Kwan said. The one Soo-min mentioned earlier. There's a security camera on the building beside my dock that caught the entire conversation between us that night. Not just the 40 seconds someone cut and sent to your husband. It shows everything. Your sister's photo on your phone. Your tears. My promise to help you. If Doyun ever sees that full footage, he will know in less than a minute that you never betrayed him. Hope rose in Adaeze's chest for the first time in days. Then let's get it to him. It's not that simple, Soo-min said. The footage is stored on a private server inside a building owned by one of Hyun-soo's oldest allies. Getting it out means walking directly into the lion's den, and if we're caught trying, Hyun-soo will know exactly how close we are to exposing him. Then we be careful, Adaeze said. But we go. Back at the Beck estate, Yunbai Cho had not gone to visit her mother. She sat instead in a small office 2 towns away, a phone pressed to her ear, her voice low and clipped as she spoke to the one person she answered to above everyone else. Doyun's men are pulling camera footage near the pier, she said. If they find the right angle, this entire plan collapses before his birthday even arrives. On the other end of the line, Hyun-soo's voice was calm in a way that made even Yunbai's spine go rigid. Then make sure they don't find it. You said the footage on that second camera was destroyed. I said I would handle it, Yunbai said carefully. There's been a complication. Soo-min has been asking questions about the warehouse fire. If she figures out the order came from inside the Beck house and not from Kwan, she'll go straight to her boss, and Kwan will go straight to Doyun. A long silence stretched across the line. Then it's time to remove the complication, Hyun-soo said finally. Both of them, the girl in Lagos and her sister here. We've waited long enough. Doyun's birthday is 4 days away, and I will not lose what is mine because 2 women refuse to know their place. Yunbai's hand tightened slightly around the phone. For a moment, something almost like hesitation crossed her face. The first flicker of doubt she had allowed herself since this entire plan began. But she pushed it down the way she always did. The way she had been pushing it down since the day Hyun-soo first found her, struggling and desperate, and offered her more money than she had ever seen in her life in exchange for loyalty no one was supposed to question. "Understood," she said. "I'll make the arrangements tonight." She ended the call and sat alone in the quiet office for a long moment, staring at a small photograph taped inside her desk drawer, a young girl with bright eyes, laughing at something just out of frame. Her own daughter, living 3 towns away with a grandmother who believed Yunbai's job paid for private school out of nothing more than hard work and good fortune. Yunbai closed the drawer slowly and stood. There was no room left for doubt now, not with so much already in motion, and not with so much already lost. By the time evening came, Doyun had still not found her. Hae-won returned to the house with a face that told Doyun everything before he even spoke. "She's not with her mother, sir. Her mother hasn't seen her in 3 weeks. Doyun's jaw was tight, his mind moving through every conversation he'd had with Yunbai over the past several months, searching for some sign he had missed. "Pull every record we have on her. Every call. Every payment. I want to know who she's been talking to." Hae-won nodded and turned to leave, then stopped at the doorway. "Sir, there's something else." One of the kitchen staff mentioned that 2 nights ago, before the warehouse fire, Yunbai met with elder Hyun-soo privately in his study. Late. After everyone else had gone to bed. Doyun went very still. "How late?" "Past midnight, sir." The pieces in Doyun's mind began arranging themselves into a shape he did not want to see, but could no longer ignore. His great-uncle. His assistant. A meeting late at night, days before a fire that nearly destroyed his organization, and a video designed to destroy his marriage on the very same week. "Hae-won," he said slowly. "Pull the family will. The one Hyun-soo has always refused to let anyone else read in full." Hae-won frowned. "Sir, that document has been locked in the family records for 30 years. Hyun-soo has the only key. Then we find a way around the key," Doyun said. Tonight. Across the bay, Adaeze, Kwon, and Soo-min moved quietly through the dark streets toward the building that held the footage that could save everything. Soo-min led the way, her steps sure and silent, while Kwon kept close to Adaeze's side, his eyes scanning every shadow they passed. "Once we're inside," Soo-min whispered, "we have maybe 6 minutes before the night guard finishes his rounds. Anything goes wrong, we leave the footage and we run. No exceptions." Adaeze nodded, her heart pressing hard against her chest, though she said nothing about it out loud. They reached the side entrance of a squat, gray building tucked between 2 warehouses, and Soo-min produced a small key she had clearly acquired through means she did not explain. The door opened without a sound. Inside, the hallway was dim, lit only by a single emergency light at the far end. Soo-min moved quickly toward a small server room on the left, her fingers already working through a panel of switches and cables with practiced speed. Adaeze stood watch near the door, her eyes fixed on the empty hallway, every sound outside making her pulse spike. "Got it," Soo-min whispered after a long, agonizing minute. She held up a small drive in her palm. "Full footage. Everything from that night, start to finish." "Then let's go," Kwon said. But as they turned to leave, the hallway light at the far end flickered once, then steadied, and a figure stepped into view at the end of the corridor, blocking the only way out. It was Yunbai Cho. "I had a feeling someone would come looking for this eventually," she said, her voice calm despite the tension radiating from every line of her body. "I just didn't expect it to be all 3 of you, together, in the same place, making this so much easier for me." Adaeze's blood went cold. "Where is my sister?" Yunbai's eyes flicked toward her, something unreadable moving behind them. "Safe. For now. Whether she stays that way depends entirely on what happens in the next 60 seconds. "You don't have to do this," Adaeze said, taking a step forward despite Kwon's hand catching her arm in warning. "Whatever Hyun-soo is paying you, whatever he's promised you, it isn't worth what you're about to lose." For one brief moment, something flickered across Yunbai's face, the photograph in her desk drawer, the daughter she had told herself this was all for. Then it was gone, replaced by something harder, more decided. "You don't know anything about what I have to lose," Yunbai said quietly. "Put the drive on the floor and walk away, and I'll make sure your sister is returned to you unharmed once this is finished. Try to leave this building with it, and I promise you, You will never see her again." The hallway went silent except for the low hum of the emergency light overhead. Sumin's hand tightened around the small drive in her palm, her eyes locked on Yunbai, calculating the distance between them and the exit. And from somewhere outside the building, faint but growing louder, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the alley. Too many footsteps to be the lone night guard finishing his rounds. The footsteps grew louder, echoing off the narrow walls of the alley outside, and for one terrible second, no one in that hallway breathed. Then the door at the far end burst open, and it was not Hyunsu's men who stepped through it. It was Hae-won, with 4 of Doyun's own people behind him, and Doyun himself walking in last, his coat still damp from the night air, his eyes scanning the scene in front of him. Adaeze, Kwon, Sumin, and Yunbai Cho standing frozen in the dim corridor like a photograph nobody had agreed to take. "Doyun," Adaeze said, her voice catching on his name. He did not look at her first. His eyes went to Yunbai, and something in his face shifted into a kind of cold understanding. "I pulled your records tonight," he said quietly. "Every call, every payment from an account that traces back to my own great-uncle. You've been working for Hyunsu for almost 2 years." Yunbai's calm cracked, just slightly at the edges. "You don't understand what he's holding over me." "Then tell me," Doyun said. "Because right now, you're the only person in this hallway who hasn't told me a single true thing." Yunbai's hand trembled around nothing, her eyes darting once toward Adaeze, then toward the small drive still held tightly in Sumin's palm. Whatever calculation had been running behind her eyes a moment ago seemed to collapse all at once, like a wall finally giving way under pressure it had held back for too long. "My daughter," she said, and her voice broke clean in half. "He found out about her 3 years ago, that I had a child no one in my family knew about, that I'd been hiding her to keep my job, my reputation, everything. He told me he would expose it, ruin both of us, unless I did exactly what he asked. I never wanted any of this. I never wanted to hurt anyone's sister. I just wanted to protect mine." The hallway went quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet now. Heavier, sadder, full of things that had been hidden for far too long. "Where is Chidinma?" Adaeze asked, stepping closer despite Kwon's hand still resting lightly on her arm. "Please, Yunbai, if there's any truth left in you, tell me where my sister is." Yunbai closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them again, something had settled in her face. Not relief exactly, but the quiet decision of someone who had finally chosen which fear to live with. "There's a house," she said, 20 minutes from here, near the old fish market by the North Harbor. She's being kept there with 1 guard. I can take you." "You're not taking anyone anywhere," Hae-won said, stepping forward. "You're done making decisions tonight. Let her take us," Doyun said, surprising everyone in the room, including himself. "We don't have time to search every building near the harbor. If she knows the location, we move now." Hae-won hesitated, then nodded once and motioned 2 of his men toward Yunbai. As they started toward the door, Doyun turned, finally, to look at his wife. Really look at her, the way he had been afraid to since the moment that video first played on his tablet. "Adaeze," he said quietly, "show me the footage." Sumin handed him the small drive without a word. They found a laptop in the small office at the front of the building, and together, Doyun, Adaeze, Kwon, and Sumin standing close around the screen, they watched the full 40 minutes of footage that the original video had cut down to 40 seconds of lies. They watched Adaeze arrive on the dock alone, shaking, a phone clutched in her hand showing a photograph of her sister tied to a chair. They watched her show the photo to Kwon, watched her beg him for help, because she had no one else in this country who might know how to find someone willing to disappear a person without leaving a trace. They watched Kwon's face shift from confusion to something gentler as he listened, watched him promise to help her find out who was responsible before she ever said a single word about Doyun's business. And they watched the moment her knees gave out beneath her, the moment she reached for the nearest steady thing to keep herself upright, the moment Kwon said the only words the original video had bothered to keep. "Don't let go," not as an invitation, but as a simple instruction to a woman who was about to fall. Doyun watched it twice. By the second time, his hand had found Adaeze without either of them deciding to make that happen. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice had nothing cold left in it at all. "I should have trusted you from the first night. I let 4 years disappear because of 40 seconds someone handed to me on purpose." You didn't know? Adaeze said softly. Someone built this to make sure you wouldn't. If you've made it this far into the story, thank you for staying with these two through the hardest part. Go ahead and subscribe now, and tell me in the comments if you suspected Yunbai before the reveal. There's still one truth left to uncover, and it's the biggest one yet. They reached the house near the old fish market just before midnight. Yunbai led them to a side door, her hands still trembling, and the single guard inside, a young man who looked more frightened than dangerous, surrendered the moment he saw how many people had arrived with Doyun Beck standing at the front of them. Chidinma was sitting in the corner of a small back room, her wrists tied loosely to a chair, her face streaked with days of crying, but otherwise unharmed. The moment she saw her sister's face in the doorway, the sound that left her was not a word at all, just a single broken cry of relief that filled the whole room. Adaeze crossed the floor and dropped to her knees in front of the chair, her hands shaking as she worked at the ties around her sister's wrists. "I'm here," she kept saying, over and over, like the words themselves were the thing keeping her standing. "I'm here. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm here." Outside the room, Doyun pulled Hae-won aside. "Where is Hyunsu?" "Still at the estate, sir. He doesn't know we found Yunbai yet." "Good," Doyun said. "Then let's make sure he's still there when we arrive." By the time they reached the Beck estate, the sky had begun its slow climb toward dawn. Hyunsu was in his study, exactly where Hae-won said he would be, a cup of tea cooling beside him as he read through papers that had nothing to do with the storm closing in around him. He looked up when the door opened, and whatever he saw in Doyun's face told him immediately that something had gone very wrong with a plan he had believed was already finished. "Doyun," Hyunsu said carefully. "It's late. Whatever this is, surely it can wait until." "Yunbai told us everything," Doyun said. "About the warehouse fire. About the video. About my wife's sister. About a clause in our family that you've been counting on for longer than I've known you were capable of something like this." Hyunsu's face did not change at first, the years of practiced calm, holding steady even now. "I don't know what lies that woman has been telling you, but I read the will myself 2 hours ago," Doyun said. "Hae-won found a way around the lock you've kept on it for 30 years. The clause is real, Elder. And so is the fact that you arranged for my wife's sister to be kidnapped, hired my own assistant to manage the threats, and paid Soo-min Ha to set fire to my warehouse and make it look like an act of war from a man who never gave that order." For the first time since Doyun had known him, Hyunsu's composure slipped entirely. "Everything I did for this family," he said, his voice rising now, sharp and desperate in a way it had never been before. "That land belongs to people who understand what it means to protect what we've built, not to a boy who married a foreigner and let his judgment soften because of it." "You mean a boy who trusted his wife," Doyun said quietly, "instead of building his entire life around fear, the way you did." Hyunsu's mouth opened, but no words came. Behind Doyun, in the doorway, Adaeze stood with her sister's hand still held tightly in her own, watching the old man's certainty finally crumble into something small and tired. "You will not be touching that land," Doyun said. "Not now. Not after my birthday. Not ever. And you will not be staying in this house another night." It was Soo-min, standing near the back of the room with Kwon beside her, who finally stepped forward. "There's also the matter of the warehouse fire, Elder. 6 of Doyun's men were hurt because of an order you arranged behind your own family's back. I don't think this ends with you simply packing a bag." Hyunsu looked from face to face, his great-nephew, the woman he had tried to destroy, the men he had underestimated for years, and seemed, for the first time, to understand that the story he had been writing for himself had ended in a way he never once considered. 3 days later, on the morning of Doyun's 30th birthday, the house by the harbor looked different than it had all week. The rain had finally stopped. Sunlight came through the windows in long, warm lines across the floor, and the quiet that filled the rooms now felt like peace instead of fear. Chidinma sat on the porch with a cup of tea, healthier already, laughing softly at something Hae-won had said to make her smile. Yunbai Cho had been allowed to leave the country quietly, on the condition that she never again involve herself in anything connected to the Beck family. A small mercy Adaeze herself had asked Doyun to consider for the sake of a little girl who had done nothing wrong. Hyunsu's fate had been handed over to the family council, his name already fading from rooms he had once filled completely. Doyun found Adaeze standing near the same window where she had once watched a single light blink on across the bay, wondering if anyone in this world still believed her. "I keep thinking about that night," he said, coming to stand beside her. "How close I came to losing you over 40 seconds of footage someone built specifically to break us apart." "You didn't lose me," Adaeze said, turning to face him. "Not even for a second. I was always still here, waiting for you to ask the right question." "Then let me ask it now," Doyun said, and something in his voice had gone gentle in a way she had never heard before, not even on their wedding day. "Whatever comes next, more secrets, more enemies, more people who will try to use what we have against us. Will you stay and let me prove I'll never doubt you again?" Adaeze smiled, the first full smile she had allowed herself in what felt like a lifetime. "Don't let go," she said softly, echoing the words that had started this whole story, except this time they meant exactly what they sounded like. "That's all I ever wanted you to do." Outside, the harbor glittered under a clean morning sky, and for the first time in days, the water carried nothing but light. Thank you for staying with this story all the way to its final word, and for letting these two people find their way back to each other through every lie standing in front of them. Please subscribe so you never miss the next story like this one, and leave a comment telling me which character surprised you the most. Your support means more than you know, and it helps these stories reach the people who need them most.